some darker colours where I'm going to sort of blend out some darker tones. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this to literally work around some of the edges of the shape like this, okay? And again, then I'm going to use my brush in a sort of rounded movement to blend the colour out, okay? And you can use just water as well. So put your colour down and then use the water to move it around, and you'll automatically get those sort of tonal effects. Kind of forget the drips are there, they're just part of the experimental background. Then when you've done that and around a few of the shapes, and just put a little bit more here, I'll show you. Okay, I've done it towards the top. I'm just letting that dry a little bit. So then you can, yeah, few of the edges, just work out some darker and keep bringing it out to create these tonal effects. And then if you take a finer brush, I did have a really little fine one here somewhere. Not sure where I put it. Let's see, I've got one in here, I think. This one. Let's see if this will do. Ah, there it is in the water. Right. Then we're going to make some really darker colours again. Now, rather than just using black all the time, try and mix maybe some darker blues in with your colour to get the darker shades. You don't always need to use black to create those, okay? And you can see up here I've already started doing it. You can then add your really, really darkest tones to some of the edges of your shape, okay? Now, you're not trying to use tone to make things 3D at this stage, which normally is what you do. You're just using them to make this drawing come forward, and you'll see that by working into the background, the drawing actually becomes more of the focus, which is perhaps surprising, but it does, okay? So it tends to bring the drawing forward into the view better. Okay, so we're just going to use the brush again to blend that out. All right, and we're adding some darker areas in. Now, what I would do is maybe do this around half of the drawing. Don't do it all the way around. So this is supposed to be sort of an experimental study, okay? It's not supposed to be a big final piece or anything like that. It's just supposed to be a little experiment with the continuous line drawing and working into negative space and background shapes, okay? So don't think you've got to paint the whole of this background, because what that does is has the opposite effect. You just end up seeing a sort of floating shape and you can't identify it as a flower. It'll look a lot better if you just focus on maybe half of it and work with this sort of drip technique and adding some darker tones. It's a good way of practicing mixing colour too, okay? Now, what I recommend you do is, obviously I've chosen a flower. It could be anything that links to your theme, your subject area. But what if it's trainers or trees, whatever it might be, using your photographs, do a series of continuous line drawing and just have a little play around at this sort of drippy effect and colour mixing effect and layering it and see where you go, okay? It's partly a very experimental technique just to practice mixing and blending colour and working with sort of drip effects. Have a look at the two other YouTube clips that I've added to my playlist, and you'll see how artists do this. Another artist you could look at, Agnes Cecile, who creates whole portraits using this technique. So it's just a way of getting you to be a little bit more experimental, okay? And I recommend at least a double page spread, just having a play around with continuous line and negative space painting.